Hello and welcome to this audio version of my spring equinox fairy oracle deck reading for March 2023. I wanted to make this quick audio here to just share conveniently for anybody on BitChute or YouTube, or perhaps overwrite directly on my site, who would prefer to listen versus read the entire blog. And so thank you so much for joining me, for tuning in here today, and for taking an interest in divination and in our beautiful fairies and spirit realm that surrounds us here. I am so excited with this reading. I wish I could have made a video of it, but I just didn't have the time capacity at all. It's actually taken me 2 or 3 days to come through the whole reading, through writing up the entire blog, taking all the pictures, and now doing and recording of the voice version. So, yeah, there's a lot more work when it comes to, writing these things out and sharing them like this versus just doing, video while doing the reading, because then you just have the one short segment of it. And that does have a value of its own, but like I said, I didn't have the time capacity for that. And also, sometimes it's nice to be able to take your time with a heavy reading like this kind. So you can take your time with each card and really look at it and see what you particularly see in it, right? Read the words, read the signifiers and the descriptions, but also, allow your imagination, allow your heart and your intuition to read along and to pick up any more subtle or energetic input that it triggers, right? Because these things are multidimensional, multi-layered, right? When we pass information, not only are we speaking words, and not only does our logical mind have that verbiage to process and take into account, but there's also frequencies, there's the energetics of it, right? There's the feelings and the emotions that what you're reading causes within you, particularly based on your walk up to the present moment, right? And that's different for each of us. That's why I love spiritual divination so much, because, and cards in general, divination cards, tarot, because the messages are general, yet they cause such individual, defined, and particular interpretations within us. When we hear that message, that it rings true, or it sparks up, or it recalls something within us, that we weren't noticing before. That's special for us in that moment, it's that eyes to see and ears to hear kind of gnosis of wisdom. And yeah, that's why I love divination. And this reading particularly really, for me, did a lot of that. Yes, there's a huge collective meaning, and when I talk about the interpretation I go through at the end, I did write it in a more collective light. But there is a way to turn the lens and cast that light inwards in the same reading, and I personally received lots of unique little data points and inputs of workings and understandings, and that I didn't mention in the write-up, just because they are distinct to my journey and to my walk up to this present moment, and my personal equinox that I'm facing in my little reality bubble. So I didn't want to include personal things and sort of taint or influence others. I tried to keep the interpretation open and also offer a few different perspectives of ways that they can be interpreted, just to make sure others who hear or read this receive anything they might be, not grasping completely. They might need to hear it as external confirmation, or they might need to see it in black and white print for it to really kind of unlock that knowing within themselves. So yeah, that's my little to-do here at the beginning. And I guess I'll jump into my reading now. So I started off my blog just by pointing out that we are officially halfway through the first half of 2023. And this also represents the midway point between our two main yearly polarities, winter and summer. And I think that's a really important detail, a little nuance to keep in mind and to use sort of as a visualization of a deeper understanding of the metaphor that we're moving through right now. Right? Because when we notice we do have these two opposing polarities that we work between, winter and summer, regardless of where on the planet you are, what kind of degree you witness of the seasons and all of that, right? But just as generalities for organic template settings, we have winter and summer as the polarities. But we have the beautiful halfway marker points between those two of spring and fall, right? And there's so many beautiful ways to look at that with numbers and numerology and math. I won't get into that too much right now. But I think having that visualization of understanding we're halfway through the halfway point, that this particular moment in space and time is about the gray shading, the balancing in between those two, and the midway point between those two, the time of renewal, of refreshing rest and rebirth, that kind of happens when you're halfway through a journey, right? And so that kind of mentality, that spatial recognition, right, of where we are and what's really kind of capable at that point. When you're halfway through your trip to one destination, you can't rush it. You can't get too caught up on the final end game, on warm beds and baths when you're still trekking through the mountains, right? It's not helpful to look that far ahead and get really tied into the ending of the rest and relaxation with the trip when you're only halfway there. There's other more aligned, more supportive frequencies and essences to tap into at this midway point during rest. Yes, it's a time of rest and relaxation, and it's similar, to the halfway point, the end, but there's a sense of needing to still hold on to some perseverance, some real motivation and strength to be able to pick up your camp and pack your pack and get on to keep on trekking pretty soon. So yeah, that's kind of what I want to impress here at the start, and what I was hoping to share as I note this very particular place that we're at now. Another essence, obviously, of this midway point and of spring in itself is the essence of spring, right? And spring itself has always been my favorite season. There's hope in the air, blossoms everywhere, right? There's a strong sense of personal perseverance for having made it, through the cold winter, right? That in itself is another whole envisionment mentality that's very helpful, and that is slightly more obvious, at this time, I feel. I thought I'd do an Equinox reading, and I knew I wanted to use my Fairy Ring Oracle deck. This is my oldest deck that I have had, oh my goodness, for 20 years now. I felt, and a few of my friends agree even, right, we've been talking a lot about this, that the fairies are really active right now. And, generally in springtime, we have an abundance of activity as well. So I thought it was just a perfect deck for this vernal equinox reading. The Fairy Festival card and the ancient tradition of Ostara is the current celebration taking place. And so I'd like to just give you all a quick reference to the themes and frequencies of this time, which are represented by that Fairy Oracle card within my deck. And these would be dawning of creativity and a sense of emergence, an inpouring of energy and ideas, versatility, dexterity, idealism, individuality, ideas taking form, dreams crystallizing. It's also important to note the shadowed aspects of this card, which can denote or cast a warning for us to be aware of. Things like restlessness, feeling we've wasted energy, rashness, impatience, indecisiveness, superficiality, thoughtlessness, or inconsistency. And so with those things in mind, and with this feelings of what the Ostara festival celebration time of year represents, I sat down with my crystals and my singing bowl, and I decided on doing this 8-card circular spread that actually has the same name as the book itself, The Fairy Ring. This spread is helpful as a check-in to see where energies are at and what could be presenting itself soon in your world. And so I thought it was perfect for the collective reading for the spring equinox. So I got settled, I prepared to shuffle. I asked my cards, as I always do, to offer any advice, guidance, or support during the present equinox for the collective, as well as myself. I offered them gratitude and appreciation for their audience, and I began to shuffle. When I'm doing a specific type of reading with a spread, a lot of times I like to shuffle the cards until I feel comfortable, until they get a good feel for me and their energy, and what I'm asking. And then I like to fan them out in front of me and choose by intuition the cards. I'll close my eyes a lot of times and choose 1, 2, 3, however many there are right in a row, and stack them in front of myself or in my hands, and then put the rest of the deck away to the side while I do the reading. And then, I'll lay out the spread as it's meant to be laid out and get into the reading. But as I was wrapping up my shuffling for this, a single card popped out face up. I always pay attention to these kind of messages. And so I knew that I had to pay attention to this card. I didn't want to interrupt my ritual, I guess, of, fanning the cards and choosing the 8 that were going to make up this ring. And so I was called to just leave this as sort of a 9th card. And I put it right at the center of the spread. I thought that I could allow that message of the card to be interpreted as an overall theme, or maybe a marker of sorts. And as I said, that card was, upright. I mean, face up in the first place. And I saw it was Samhain, Samhain, Halloween, Samhain, however you prefer to pronounce that wonderful time. And so I set it at the center, and I felt it was a frame to hold all of these 8 cards, within maybe the center of the spokes of a wheel, right? And so first and foremost, I want to just go over the ninth card. I put the ninth card first in the individual breakdown on my blog. So if you're following along with the blog, you'll see that that's first, and you can see the beautiful Samhain card. And that I just denote that Samhain is also known as Halloween, that time of year, late October, early November. And the card itself, I just gave a quick bullet points of what the interpretations generally are. And that is a gaining of psychic abilities, deepening of connections to intuition, the veil between spirit and this world thinning, strengthening ties with ancestors, seeing the cycle of life and death as inevitable and divine. It also signifies times of ritualistic initiations, rites of passage from one level, age, or layer to the next. Be aware and beware of immobility, quiescence, and censure. So those are the general kind of shadowed aspects or reversal of that card. We do see it upright in this spread, and so I think it's more, of a gentle reminder to just be aware of those kind of things, and not so much as a real call to action surrounding them. Side note, if you're interested in learning more about spiritual divination, tarot, and how to read cards and like reversals and things like that, I have a whole playlist of spiritual divination practice points on YouTube. Also on my website, amariespeaks.com. If you go over there to the tools section, you'll see a whole page built up for spiritual divination, and there's lots of guidance and some teachings over there if you're interested. Now, on to the actual 8 cards for the fairy ring spread. Our first card, which is considered to be the current phase, was represented by the Tidymun, the Knave of Spring, and it was reversed. This water fairy is usually friendly to humans and denotes a well-needed helping hand or sign of support when the card appears upright. However, here we have it reversed. So this card is asking us to consider the following. Are we ignoring an unpleasant situation? Dealing with someone who is cruel, ungrateful, deceitful, or selfish? The card in response reminds us of the solutions. We should tap into our own joy for life, have gratitude for a job well done, be a helping hand to others, seek out innocent pleasures and enjoy them just for you. So the second card, we have what's behind us, and that came up as a beautiful Queen Una, the Queen of Autumn, upright and shining. This Queen Fairy is known for her wit, intelligence, and quick problem-solving skills. She is wisdom, patience, and retribution. The card meaning in itself reminds us or denotes development of practical skills that we've done already, that we have built up, the honing of a trade or craft, finding logical solutions to complex problems, seeing outside that common box, also represented by common sense and troubleshooting skills, someone who gives good advice. Our third card, what is before us, we see the crow seed, the 5 of summer, also known as the fairy cow. The cow is a revered animal among the fairies, and the appearance of the gentle and protective fairy cow heralds the gift of unconditional love, the type of all-encompassing, non-judgmental, eternal care of like a mother has for her child. The card itself signifies the need for emotional support, tap into or discover your own well of unconditional love, as I like to say. Remember or heal your connection to your mother and the great mother, Mother Earth. Embody the frequencies of these words: comfort, support, shelter, care, unselfish love. Our fourth card, weaknesses to overcome, is represented by Ain. She is the Six of Summer. The card is reversed, and this fairy, Ain, is known to protect innocence due to representing the righteous justice surrounding women and children who've been taken advantage of or harmed. When this card appears reversed, Ain reminds us of not just the pure goodness of virtue, but also the great reasons why we should respect that sacred boundary. It is out of love and kindness that we do this. The card reverse signifies the building of unreal expectations for relationships, intimate and casual, holding on to resentments or biased perspectives, feelings of inequality, injustice, separation, love not returned, unworthiness, can represent circumstances like divorce, unfaithfulness, misunderstandings, and quarrels. Our fifth card is our strengths to be developed. And this card is the Boggart, the Three of Winter, also reversed. This well-known fairy is typically depicted in a relatively negative light, usually seen as maleficent and bothersome entity who heralds troubles at home, small arguments, disagreements, and family disagreements. In this spread, however, the Boggart is reversed, and so the fairy is turned upside down, and the message becomes slightly more positive. The message with the reversal is: to succeed in gaining your ends, you will need to be clever and tactful when dealing with others. It also warns us that our diplomatic skills and cunning will be tested to the utmost. We have our sixth card next, and this is obstacles in our way. And this card came up as the Embolic Festival, which is like traditional kind of New Year's, the calendar New Year's, midwinter. It's usually around the end of January, February 1st is the traditional time of Embolic. And this card represents the frequencies of resurgence, purification, freshness, originality, new beginnings. It also reminds us to beware and be aware of boredom, depression, stagnation, stalemates, or the appearance of a lack of progress or even decline. Our seventh card is what will help us, and this came up reversed, another reversal of Jack Frost, the Knave of Winter. This fairy has a playful yet superficial vibe, which usually heralds temporary mishaps or setbacks, kind of like what you'd see from a Practical Joker. In our reading, the card shows us a reversal, which calls in a bit of a colder vibe. When we see Jack Frost reversed, it's a guidance to pull back, to cool down any overly passionate feelings, to distance yourself a bit emotionally from others, from projects, from anything that you feel really tied into, to remain vigilant around trustworthiness and honesty, and to beware and be aware, possibly of someone who appears overly attractive or too good to be true. The eighth card, our final card, is the Pixie Upright, the Nine of Spring. The Pixies are a classic fun-loving fairy whom most people are familiar with. They are known not only for playing jokes, but also for coming in handy to assist humans with chores, tasks, and even small miracles sometimes. The Pixies arrive in our spread as a friendly reminder that although we've been going through a difficult time, we should stop taking everything so seriously. Lighten up. Have some fun. They remind us that laughter is the best medicine, and they ask us to try to recover our childlike wonder. So that takes us through here, just the breakdown of the 8 cards in their place settings and what the cards mean. Now, I go into my own personal overall interpretation here that I'm going to read through. And this is just a little bit deeper about the orientation of those cards within their place settings and how they interact with the others, and how we can see that sort of as a whole story, and read it with a little bit more detail now in the overall interpretation. So it might be slightly redundant, but I do feel like it's important to go over the whole meaning of the reading as well, and not just to see the segmented place settings with the card interpretations. So here we go. Since we first received the card of Samhain for the overall theme, the message or center focus, I will be reiterating this, and I'd like you to really keep this card in mind as well as we go over the whole interpretation. You might find nuances or a new way to look at the message when you keep in mind this overall filter or theme of Samhain. I think also it, as the center point of our reading, could be seen as a timeline or a point of guidance in some way. The cards could be affirming to us that these potent equinox energies will be staying with us through Halloween. Or perhaps we'll see loose ends wrapping up by Halloween time. Or maybe you have a special signifier there for you that calls a great synchronicity to that time, or something along those lines. There are so many possibilities when you do collective readings that I like to leave room for these different angles of thought. So keep in mind for your own reference all these different points, right, of the 9th card while we're going through the reading. It's clear that the spring equinox is ushering in deep connections for each of us to tie into our ancestors, astral guides, personal intuition, as well as the collective consciousness. More and more people are feeling the call to awaken and plug into their purpose here. And I think this reading confirms to us that this is in fact happening and will continue to occur over the next 6 to 9 months. Our current phase card reflects the friendly Tidymun reversed. And this clicks in perfectly with our world today, especially concerning those of us awake to the spiritual battle taking place. It's clear that many people out there in the collective are ignoring an unpleasant situation, or many perhaps, right? And even more of us still yet are feeling those pressures that come along with dealing with cruel, ungrateful, deceitful, selfish people, whether in your direct life with family and friends, or out in the world with business, bosses, strangers. There are so many examples of this kind of situation happening currently. The cards seek to inspire us by reminding us of our strength, common sense, and practicality, with the second card denoting how far we've come. Behind us is the shining figure of Queen Una, supporting our current phase with the hard-earned lessons we worked our way through in the past. The cards want us to know our skills will not go unused. Our muscles will be tested, and our troubleshooting skills will be put to good use. They offer us a pat on the back to congratulate us for coming to class prepared. Before us, in the present moment, awaits the glorious gifts of that crow's teeth or fairy cow. The current moment is infused with unconditional love, acceptance, support, and comfort. If you're facing a time that does not feel so great, or seems to be malaligned to this joyous message, then this card could be a gentle reminder that in order to find true solutions, you'll need to embody these emotionally supportive frequencies, or even perhaps offer up unselfish love to some person in order to help them through a tough time. It's clear that for this new cycle, it will be calling forth opportunities to overcome some lower, more negative emotions like resentment, bias, inequality, and injustices perhaps that we've faced before or we've witnessed, been a part of, right? It's important that we see these obstacles as meaningful and choose to assert ourselves in responsible, sovereign ways. Ain asks us to stand up for sacred innocence and purity. So these weaknesses to overcome will most likely center around some varieties of victimization or victimhood, whether it's your own or you're witnessing that of another. Be mindful of the trap of the victim and the perpetrator, that slave-master cycle, and seek to release from any cycles that are negative, self-fulfilling prophecies, or even states of self-pity that maybe you catch yourself within. If you find yourself locked into negative spirals, remind yourself of where you've been, what practical lessons you've learned from those experiences, and how far you've come to date. Really infuse and bring in, ask to receive those vibrations of that beautiful fairy cow in the present moment, and you will receive them, you will feel them. You'll be able to tap right into them and draw them in and infuse yourself, fuel yourself up with them. As we navigate through this equinox time, we will be called to develop our diplomatic skills and strengthen our intuition in regards to those around us. The Boggart card, appearing reversed, reminds us that we will be tested. And so we must remember that we'll need to be clever and tactful when we deal with others. If you'd like to get what you want out of any situation, you must be cunning, smart, and reasonable. Yes, this cunning, clever, tactful personality gets a bad rap a lot. And it does. It has heavy potentialities to become negatively oriented. So please be careful. But know that within those workings, within those flavorings, there are positive pieces of truth and a rites of passage to be learned there. And so don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, but see that these are strengths to be developed carefully. They are weaponry to be sharpened. They are our swords. You know, they are not playthings. It's not something to take lightly. It's something to use with skill, carefully, right? So to strengthen that ability and to strengthen that sense within you of how to be able to carefully cut through things, right? Also, when we take into account the previous cards up until this Bogart card, we start to gain an idea of what the collective outlook the fairies are presenting us with. We have been and will continue to be faced with difficult interactions and circumstances due to unpleasant, unhappy people who seek to manipulate us through lies, plain and simple. But we are well equipped with tools to combat their distortions and control mechanisms. We must choose unconditional love as the meeting ground and seek solutions from that point only, like a mother between her children. The sixth placement of the fairy ring spread provides insights into any obstacles that might be in our way. And it's striking to receive a fairy festival card for this spot in this reading, because it could denote that January, February time as being particularly rough or an obstacle in itself, or perhaps it could be when the first signs of obstacles will present themselves. It could be any number of possibilities really surrounding that literal time period. So if that time period is generally something that you fear or you're worried around, perhaps that kind of New Year time. It can be very stressful to a lot of people for many different reasons. So it could just be a little heads up to remembering that that will be coming. It could also be a comforting sort of casting out through the future to let us know that up until this embolic period approaching for 2024, that we might see smooth riding, we might see progression, we might see only forward moving, smooth sailing kind of circumstances and scenarios, and that we won't be met with any real obstacles until that time, you know. Having that kind of sense of security and knowing that the path is clear in front of us for quite some time. There's also the card meaning itself, right, which signifies these vibrations of purification, resurgence, freshness, originality. The setting of the card and its the obstacles to keep an eye out for. And therefore, I think that the card, you know, could be reminding us that hardships and rough edges are smoothed over and worked through during renewal and rebirth times. And so perhaps the obstacles that we will be facing within this time will be those kind of types of harder situations that present themselves through these cleansing, clearing, metamorphic kind of times. There's a specific flavoring of catalysts, I feel, that we experience when we're going through these fresh starts, the newness, the resurgence. And so it could just be, you know, heralding and recalling to us to be reminded of those, I guess. The embolic card itself in the spread is portrayed upright. However, it could be helpful still to look at the reversal side of things, especially because the sixth placement is about obstacles, right? So the shadowed aspects of this festival are boredom, stagnation, stalemates, or even seemingly apparent decline in activity or an initial lack of progress being observed. These kinds of things are classic roadblocks, and they are to be expected when we venture out on new paths. So remember, the key to moving through obstacles is facing them directly with as much clarity and honesty as possible, right? Know that you are capable. Remind yourself of your steady standing, and just use this as a point of awareness to be prepared and expectant, right, of obstacles. The seventh card informs us that help will come from an unlikely form and could even be hard to see or accept as a helping hand at some points. Jack Frost reversed, especially within this spread and specific to this reading, really shows us that sometimes we need to take a cold approach. Sometimes being disconnected a bit, you know, being separate is necessary or even beneficial. Our best bet in these coming days, weeks, and months is to remain slightly detached and to keep our passions under control, especially if you are usually somebody who's hot-headed. Work to distance yourself emotionally from others. See yourself as free, unattached, independent. This might sound a little off-putting at first, but I really don't see this, and I don't think the cards are trying to relay to us a cruel or bitter kind of reservation or a cutting off, you know, a castration, or you know, binding yourself off from others, blockading yourself. I am seeing this as respecting your own energetic, emotional, and spiritual boundaries, as well as those of others. There's a real intentional separation, and perhaps also what could help us, if this is new to you or you struggle with this, as I do, right? to remind us that this is what will really help us through. Gaining this sense of completeness on our own, not needing all these external attachments and anchors, not entangling our energies out there into the universe and into all other expectations and people and situations and circumstances, right? When we understand that this kind of cold approach is a form of tough love and also a balancing practice for us, we can all see, I hope, the huge benefits reaped by this sort of help Jack Frost is offering us with this reversal situation. The last bit of this card is that it's a face card within my fairy deck, and that means that it can hold a more literal interpretation about, actual people. It could suggest that help will come in the form of a young male energy who represents the essence of Jack Frost. Reversed, So this is where it gets a little bit wonky because this fairy is kind of an unpleasant entity, especially reversed. Reversal of Jack Frost is an attractive person who has that appearance of helpful, but is underneath it a sly, clever, deceitful liar. The type who enjoys telling lies and making scenes. That kind of overly negatively aligned bully, who hides in the jester's costume. But that the jokes that they make and the puns they crack and all of that, they have a malicious undertone, right? There's a self-serving undertone always threaded in everything they do. And everything is like a little lasso thrown out to hopefully catch somebody's energies and bring them back and hoard them for themselves, right? They have this self-preservation and this kind of self-fulfilling need, I guess. So that's why a word of caution here. And also perhaps they're telling us and telling us it could be helpful to be mindful of people like this and to be weary of them. And also, I really don't want to completely leave out the portion of possibilities that the cards could even be trying to let us know that honest help could come from such a personality, and we should leave it open. So on to the final card. And I always like to say, in regards to the last card in a spread, that the final card isn't just the overall outcome, but more clearly, it is the single most important card picked. If you were to ask this question or to seek guidance on this topic, and you were to pick just one card, this would be the card they would choose to share with you. This would be the message the fairies feel most strongly about. And how beautiful our final card is, the pixie, right? What an amazing message. Not only does it suit itself, represent the season because it's spring, and we are in spring, and this whole reading is about the spring equinox, so bam, visual confirmation of that, spring. But also the pixie is the number 9 in that suit. And 9 itself is all about that setting of sacred boundaries, the threshold between boundaries, that crossing over, the completing of boundaries and cycles. So perfect for the spring equinox, right? And the message of the Pixie's card is one of fun, laughter, childlike wonder. They encourage us to loosen up and enjoy the ride. I love that this is the overall outcome for this reading, especially when we tie it back to that very first theme card of Samhain. These two together really speak to me, of breaking those negative, karmatic, heavy bonds that have kept us chained and bogged down, overly serious, stressed and in the dark, generation after generation. how, if you look at most cultures and traditions, societies in general, that cutting out of the child, of fun, of enjoyment of life, of being, of just laughing, joking, of just enjoying your cognition, your sentience, your conscience, right? Children just do that naturally, and we have to program it out of them, cut it out of them, right? So I think that, these two cards paired together remind us that our intuition and imagination work together. They are fueled by each other. We cannot do it without our beautiful inner child. And that when we allow our inner child to grow, when we value them, we can value them in others. And we can literally value actual children. And we can heal those children coming before us, right? Coming after us, excuse me. When we tap into our imagination's creativity and curiosity for life, we release ourselves and also our ancestors, right? When we radiate out joy, unconditional love, and acceptance into the present moment, we heal ourselves, our ancestors, our children, and those will come after us as well. It's important to understand the interlinking web that connects us all and to see ourselves as active influencer within this web of life. We are constantly impacting the ether space around us, the spirit realm, and our human collective. When we actually have fun and enjoy the present moment, each present moment as it is presented with us, moving fluidly into the next and loving it, we are impacting all the layers around us with such strong positivity and love that it literally heals our world, past, present, and future. And I feel like that's the overall message for this card, for the equinox, for the work at hand, and also for the goals and intentions that we should be setting for this present time and as it flows into each next present moment through these next 6 to 9 months. So I really hope you've enjoyed the reading. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me go through it here. And I hope that you will continue to follow my blog. If this is where you found me over on WordPress, you can always find me in the interim times on my website directly, amariespeaks.com. I have BitChute and YouTube channels where I share videos of all types of things, from educational kind of videos with infographics and walkthroughs regarding spiritual divination, shadow and light work. I also have videos on the negative agendas, tricks and traps. I do some guided meditations. If you're interested in listening to those, you can find those on YouTube. And I also have a podcast over on Spotify where I have different content available. A lot of times I do audios on blogs that I've released or talk about new concepts covering all things introspection, spirituality, and happiness. So you could find me at A. Marie Speaks on any of those platforms. And finally, if you do use Telegram, I use that sort of as my home base to share all of my links across all the platforms, as well as some daily positivity tips, some personal tidbits of my own making, and helpful infographics to get us through these crazy times. So if you're looking for that kind of supportive connections, you could find me over on Telegram. So I'd like to just thank you very much for, again, tuning into this blog, for listening to my journey, and for taking the time to hear about collective messages for our wonderful world here and to do some beautiful light work out in your own direct world. So thank you so much, sending you blessings and love, and I will talk to you soon.